Alright, so now I'm gonna do my complaining video. I earned it. So yeah, I've talked about it before, but weaponized medicine, weaponized psychology. Um, yeah, I think that it's happened to me a few times in my life, and I see how it's made me more annoying. I don't want to say worse because I'm a Buddhist, so I really do believe that causes and conditions. So even though there's some people I think are dangerous, I don't think that they're bad. I think that they probably have some um, anomaly, a growth in the brain that's causing the issue, or chemical that's done damage. Um, Something along those lines. So 100% causes and conditions. So when I say it made me worse, I want to specify why. So mental health was used as a justification to hurt me, and it's gone on for a long time. And I feel like one of the reactions to that was for me to explain myself constantly, to constantly articulate my thought process to the people around me. And it can be maybe off-putting. It's part of my job, because I have to explain what the problem is to customers, and we get their permission to fix it and all that. But not just here where I'm talking to people who are relatively strangers, but talking about my motivations constantly to close friends, just over and over and over again, to explain myself. I always felt the need to explain myself. And I think that arose from accusations of me being unstable. Now, it's my position that that also caused a lot of anger in my life. In other words, I was relatively easygoing. I mean, relatively. Every man's got his limits, but I wasn't a short-fused individual. Prior to the use of mental health as a justification to disenfranchise me, felt like that made me angry. And then, as like a feedback, you're angry, so you're sick. It's like a witch trial. And so where I draw the line is like with medicine, doctors and stuff. Is your actual intention to heal someone? And do you actually believe that they're sick? Like, most doctors, I feel, don't have to wrestle with that because they have very willing customers who are begging them for help endlessly, right? So no emergency room doctor has to wrestle. Well, they do when they get unconscious patients. There's decisions to be made, but they don't have to wrestle with the idea of the ethics of treating someone against their will very often, unless there's consciousness issues. Because everybody who's dealing with an emergency room doctor generally needs help and wants help and is there willingly. I think that if a doctor is legitimately in the belief that somebody needs help for, one reason or another, I think that the threshold to impose that on them is pretty high. Like, yeah. Basically, I tried to heal myself, not, it's all a function of power. And this is why I didn't like psychiatry to begin with, because you have to pay them, you have to give them your power for them to tell you what your problem is, and your problem is usually lack of power. And you would have been better off keeping your power and not paying them, because you would be happier. And I'm an introspective enough person. But long story short is, I didn't try to kill myself outside of prison. I tried to kill myself in prison. And that's because I don't like that environment. I don't like being controlled. I don't like it. And, at moments, in at least one serious moment, I'd prefer just to be asleep. And that was a result of being wrongfully arrested and wrongfully imprisoned. And I believe both of those actions were done not as emotional mistakes, but as punitive damage for free speech. And it was an intentional workaround to lie on the police report. It showed intention when they lied on the police report, which has now been proven in the tape. When they lied on the police report, unlike I lied in the video, right? Because initially they asked me, "Did you say this?" I said no. And then but I was yelling. I was like, "No, no, no!" Like just saying no to everything. And then once I told them what I said, it was the truth, but it wasn't a threat. You know what I mean? And I explained very clearly that it wasn't intended. You know what I mean? So at no point was there a confession of me threatening a child. And that's evident in the police video. But they wrote intentionally that I did, because they wanted to punish me for yelling at them. And then they also wrote that I said swear words that I didn't say. And the judge who articulated it in the courtroom wanted to punish me again for free speech, because she didn't like the tone or volume or nature of my speech. She wanted to hurt me. And because of those two, I believe, criminal acts, the wrongful arrest, the showing of the intentional wrong arrest by writing and signing a false police report. In other words, if it was we wrongfully arrested them, but we didn't understand, they wouldn't have been required to write a false police report. They would have written an accurate police report, and then the judge would have said, this is insufficient, right? But because they knew it was an illegitimate arrest, they had to lie on the police report, and that's what they did. And then that police report was used to punish me for my speech again and again, and because of that, I wanted to kill myself, because my life had all of its dignity stripped away, right? and I didn't want to live in such a state. And now they're using that as a justification to try to take my freedom away again. In other words, because I tried to kill myself, I can't have a trial, I can't have any rights, and I'm essentially a second-class citizen. And not giving me a trial on the initial charge in the first place. So I don't even know. I'm not, suicidal. I live alone. I have knives. I have rope. There's no fear of, self-termination. I want to live a good life, but I recognize that influence and security, and they're all functions of prosperity, and that's just another word for power. It's the truth. At this point, like, social influence is as relevant as the dollars in your pocket to what quality of life you're gonna live. And so the terminology is interchangeable to me. It's power. Whether that's social prestige or money is almost irrelevant. It's the power that determines the quality of life. And at a certain power level, there's no quality of life that's worth it for me. And that's what being trampled to death by powerful people will do, I think, to everybody. And maybe my threshold is, maybe I have less of a threshold. Like, I don't know. But they're not doing, my point is this. When they go to the courthouse and they say that I am unfit to have a trial, they are, they're not doing that because they want to treat me or because they're scared I'm gonna kill myself. They're doing that to punish me for free speech. And the evidence I have to support that belief is the fact that I'm currently living alone in a house that I own. And, to drag me out of this environment, deprive me of any ability to have prosperity, and strip me of my dignity, and deprive me of speech, or deprive me of sleep, which hurts my brain, and I'm probably forced, or try to force me to take medicine, that probably would also hurt my brain, without even giving me a trial, because I tried to kill myself when I was wrongfully arrested. I can't get around this. It's just so, it seems very like it's an assault that defies logic. Like, it's an assault for assault's sake, rather than the sake of the law or public interest, because it's at this point it's so a lot. Like, am I getting the death penalty? Am I getting the death penalty for saying, WHORE? Like, really? Is that what's gonna happen? It seems like that's what they're trying to do, is deprive me of liberty to the point where I can no longer have any influence in the world at all, where I'm essentially locked in a cage for long periods of time, and not allowed to talk to people or do or say anything to anyone. Never mind talking to my own children, anyone. And to do so under the guise of healthcare, to say that they're doing it because I'm not mentally fit. I don't know. I'm in these people's houses. I go to lawyers' houses all the time. I work in expensive towns. I go to lawyers' houses and I fix their problems for them. You know, I'm not saying that I speak Latin or that I can, you know, type 50 words a minute of, you know, coherent legalese. Like, any of this stuff. I'm not of that world. But I don't think that, and there's areas of life I am incompetent. I'll admit there are areas of life like scheduling and stuff like that. Like, I have struggles in life. I'm not gonna deny, but I don't think any of that interferes with my ability to coherently express my point of view. You know, or aid in my own defense, or whatever the threshold is, or to live independently. You know, it's a bunch of women. You know, I don't want to be like, oh, it's a feminist thing, and it's like all these, you know, quote unquote white women are circling around the quote unquote black guy, and, you know, taking me down, you know, with a bunch of shrinks. But it feels like that. Like, it feels like they're flat out trying to kill me. And, you know, at his request. And before that, at my ex-wife's request. And it really feels like a hit job, you know? Just, there's no blood work, this is literally like a 35-year-old woman who's a psychologist, who's a doctor, but I'm not sure, like, because it's all very similar. I'm not sure she's a doctor. She went to medical school, but even I think it's psychiatrists. The trist is the doctor. But even the ones who go to the medical school, I don't think that they're necessarily like the best, like, internal medicine doctors. Like, they're the best at physiology. I still think that it's more about like sedation therapy, you know, and I don't think that it's therapeutic in the sense where any of their patients recover. I think it's about, you know, slowing the decline at best, and usually it's more about just sedating the spaz. Yeah. So whatever she was, if she went to medical school, or she went to medical school and then she realized she didn't like blood that much, either way, because that's basically what it is. You're a doctor who didn't like blood, and so he became a psychiatrist. Yeah. There's no testing that's like not verbal. Like, if you went to the medical version of the psychologist, and they're like, okay, we're gonna draw some blood, we're gonna do a spinal tap, we're gonna take a hair sample, we're gonna look for toxicity, we're gonna, you know, look at the blood vessels in your eyes, we're gonna talk about your nutrition, you know what I mean? And just looked at your physiology and then explained how that would interact with, you know, your neurochemistry. Like, a lot of what I've learned is that it has the more to do with what's going on in your digestive tract, as far as the availability of some of these neurotransmitters, and that is therapeutic, and that is information a doctor who is doing therapy should want. And, you know, I also think there's an anatomy and a chemistry side of things where it's like, you know, you don't know, I don't want to hear about your 50, you know, supplement regimen. I'm going to do a spinal tap. I want to find out, you know, for myself. There's none of that. There's none of, all right, we're going to do a brain scan. We're going to see if you have a tumor in your pituitary gland. There's none of that. They're not looking at even your hormone levels, right? So for them to express this like clinical truth in a courtroom, to me is just disingenuous and transparently so. It definitely feels like a weapon. I don't know. I just, you know, I'm not willingly participating in it. That so far nobody's charged me any money, and that's, you know, I'm figuring eventually they're gonna run out of money, but you know, they just keep going and going. Whatever. Like, I don't think they have the juice necessarily to lock me up in a hospital indefinitely, and by that I mean like the ability to pay for it. I mean, they do because they could just print money, but I don't think they do. You know, I don't have insurance and I'm not going to pay for it. You know what I mean? So they can keep playing these games, and I figure eventually it's going to run out of steam. But my problem is like it's incredibly hurtful, and physically and emotionally, you know, whatever. I don't necessarily care what all these women say about me. You know, they say, like the doctor that I paid, he's a nice guy, and he's pretty much like, you know, this is your diagnosis. It's nothing bad. It's just a label. Get you access to a medicine, and that's it. You know, don't worry too much about it. But he agreed that the issue wasn't genetic, but it was environmental. And my coping mechanism is such, and my biochemistry is such, and, you know, it was the right medicine for me, and that's just what it is. And these doctors is the complete opposite. They are, they're basically calling me names. They're trying to hurt me, and, you know, I'm not asking them to be there. So I don't think they should be called doctors, to be 100% honest with you, because they're not really doing any clinical diagnosis, right? There's no, I already listed it, but there's no clinical, objective, repeatable tests to show that there's an issue. I feel, even though I'm imperfect and I over-explain things, that if anything, I'm incapable of not helping, or, you know what I mean, not shutting up. Like, if anything, they could make the argument, he will just keep talking in the courtroom if you don't shut him up. And because of that, we shouldn't have a trial, because he's just going to hammer on for 15 minutes. If she said that, it would probably be the truth, or closer to it. But to say that I'm incapable of aiding in my own defense, I don't think that would pass the Pepsi challenge. Like, if she was blindfolded and was unable to differentiate me in my case from the case of anybody else that she might be politically inclined to endorse, that she would be able to identify me as someone who was incompetent. Just looking at just the text of the conversation. I don't think that if she looked at the written text of the back and forth exchange and had no knowledge of who I was or anything, like she had no marching orders or she had no personal political interests, that she would have come to that conclusion. I think she would have come to the conclusion that he is tangent. He goes off on tangents, but coherent. He goes off on tangents, but he makes some sense. Which is the conclusion of other doctors, right? That also work for the state, who have no bias for me financially or personal relationship with me, just her coworkers essentially. I don't know. I think that I was saying before that I think that there's a case to be made that this type of kind of malicious doctoring is a civil case. Like, she should be sued. Because I think that I could line up 10 psychiatrists and give them a transcript of our interview, and without fail, every single one of them would find me competent to stand trial. And her testimony to the contrary is tantamount to malpractice. I really believe that I could have and win that case. But honestly, the malicious nature of it, to me, is criminal. Like, she shouldn't be a doctor, She's literally out there trying to hurt people. Like, you got caught trying to hurt me. I don't see how that's not an actual crime. You know what I mean? And as far as, like, it's such a BS thing. I mean, if I was talking about it with my public defender. If she wants to be my friend and be like, Mike, we'll sue all these MFers, and I'll sue them for you, but I'm gonna do 30% or whatever, take a ridiculous cut. I'd be like, fine. I'm not. That's where I'm incompetent. It's I'm never gonna do anything on my own to really, unless a lawyer is saying that they're willing to help me. I'm never gonna go file a lawsuit myself pro se and go to court and do the research to the laws that were broken and file stuff. I'm not gonna do that. If I had faith in the legal system, I might hire a lawyer, but I don't have faith in the legal system. If a lawyer was willing to do it for me, I think that they would have knowledge that I don't have, and maybe reason to believe that. But all that aside, I don't see how it's not a crime. It's a level of, I believe, provable discoherence with reality, or untrue analysis. Because that's the problem. The whole science is pure subjective nonsense. So to prove that her analysis of me as incompetent is malpractice, is to prove that, I don't like a Picasso. Well, how can you prove I don't like a Picasso? I'm a connoisseur. I'll tell you if I like it or not, right? Because that's what it means when they are, entitled to label people. But I really believe that if I had 10 psychiatrists, 10 of her peers lined up, and the only information they had made available to them was a written transcript of just the interview, right? That any of them would have found me incompetent to stand trial. Most of them would have probably found some, he's a narcissist, or, he's whatever. But I don't know what they would call me. But I'm sure they would have some analysis of my speech patterns, but I don't think any of them would think I was incapable of aiding in my own defense in a criminal trial. To me, that's like, I found that. Like, I'm not making fun of people, but I'm saying you don't have the ability to say, this is what happened, this is from my perspective how things went down. Like, you don't have that, or you don't have the knowledge of what happened at the time, right? So if you have those things, you're able to stand trial. And in order for her to say that I wasn't fit to stand trial, or I'm not fit to stand trial, to me is slanderous and malpractice, right? And beyond that, I think it's so far above that, it's criminal. Like, it represents a medical assault on my life. I'm serious. That's the way I feel. I feel like these people are attacking me. And it's not the first time. That it's one thing when it's the jailer. It's one thing when it's the cop. It's one thing when it's even the judge. It's another thing when they bring in the doctor. And like, the doctor's helping them. That's like, to me, that boggles my mind. So I do hold them to a higher standard. And when it just boggles my mind. Because her testimony was so direct. It left nothing to the imagination. He's not competent to stand trial. I think he's delusional. That's it. He represented a threat to himself, and he should be institutionalized at a whiting facility as the least restrictive environment that we feel he could safely be in, right? I'm already released. I've been living alone in my house for, a month or more now. And she's giving testimony that the least restrictive environment that I can be held in safely is a mental institution. And that I'm not competent to stand trial. It's like, I don't know. I feel like it's an assault. It's an attempt on my life. I don't see how. Like I said, Pepsi Challenge. I hope I don't get sued for Pepsi Challenge. But blindfolded test. Double-blind study. Let's find out if this lady is a liar. Double-blind study. I think there's no question. Busted, But she's going to make working for the state of Connecticut probably $200,000 this year. She's going to maybe make more than that. $250,000. Guaranteed. Rolling in money. I'm bewildered. But it is what it is. I mean, I'm at this point, every time I talk to my lawyer, I'm like, call the FBI. Call the FBI. She's like, they're just as corrupt as they are. They're just as corrupt as anyone. Why would you expect the FBI to be any less corrupt? I said, I don't know. What else do they have to do? It's unbelievable to me. Anyway, that's it. I'm done complaining. I'm going to take my dog for a walk.